Hey all you gamers out there, it's me, Tylon the Ninja. I'm about to cook dinner right now, and I thought I'd film myself making some of it for all you gamers out there who want to learn how to cook. What better way to do it than with the pro? Well, I'm not really a pro, but I do know a thing or two about cooking. Tonight I'm going to be cooking a sirloin steak dinner with red potatoes, asparagus, and cooked mushrooms. So let's see how that turns out. This is Cooking with Tylon. Alright, so what we have here is a good old petite sirloin steak. Sirloin is much cheaper on the market than if you were to get like a T-bone or a New York style steak. You can probably get like a pack of 3 for about $10 or so. Flank steak or skirt steak is another good steak to choose if you want to get something on the cheap. Basically what I did with this is that I have added some seasonings, rubbed it into it. The seasonings I use for this is kosher salt, Johnny's seasoning salt, and just some black pepper. I add a little bit to each one and just kind of rubbed it in there, added it on both sides. It's also a good idea if you want to marinate it in beer is another good option. Really, the steak will soak up the flavors and it'll really add some juiciness to it. Won't get you drunk, but it'll definitely add some to it. I recommend just mixing and matching whatever seasonings you have. There's no particular seasoning for me. I usually just like to experiment with stuff I find around in my kitchen. That's why I chose seasoning salt, kosher salt, and pepper. Seasoning salt has a lot of flavor to it, so I didn't add a whole lot to it, but I did add a good amount of salt and pepper for taste, and it's just a really good basic thing to go. As for side dishes here, I got my red potatoes, my asparagus, and mushrooms. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to fry up the potatoes on a pan. I'm going to cut these potatoes into probably into eighths each, so I'll probably have like 16 small pieces of red potatoes fried up on the skillet. And then I'm going to saute, basically grill/saute the asparagus and mushrooms. I'll be cutting the mushrooms up into slices to help it cook better. And all I really got to do with the asparagus is just cut it in half, and then it's usually good to go. Alright, so I prepped all the vegetables, sliced up the mushrooms, cut the potato in half, and then cut it into fours, and then just cut the asparagus in half. It's also really important to, of course, wash your vegetables in fresh water or cold water, to help get any of that sneaky bacteria or dirt off of it before we cook it. So I'm going to start with the potatoes because those are probably going to take the longest to cook. Alright, when frying up red potatoes, what I like to do is throw in a tablespoon of butter and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Potatoes are on the skillet, and then what you just got to do is just leave it alone for 8 to 10 minutes. Let the whole thing cook, and then after 10 minutes I'm going to flip it over and then leave it alone for another 5 minutes, but covered. With the 10-minute process, do not put a cover on it. Just, watch over it every now and then, but yeah, just set a timer for 10 minutes, leave it alone, and then we'll get back to it. Also, make sure to add some salt and pepper to taste. And as you can see here, this is just 2 whole red potatoes. That's more than enough if it's just for yourself. If you do plan to cook for more people, maybe make it 4 red potatoes. It's been roughly about 10 minutes, so I'm just going to flip them over. And then after that, I am going to put a cover on it and let it sit for 5 more minutes. I'll get back to you on then. Alright, so I took the potatoes off the pan. As you can see, I may have cooked them a little bit too much, but I think that's just because I may have used a pan that heats up a lot quicker, and I may have had it on for a little while longer. Anyway, in my opinion, it kind of tastes better, more crispy. I mean, even though it's kind of burnt. Anyway, next I'm going to be working on is the steak itself. You might be thinking, why am I not doing the other vegetables? I'll show you why in just a sec. Alright, for the steak, you're going to need something that's cast iron. For me, I like to use this pan because it's nice and flat. I'm not entirely sure if this is cast iron or not, but if you do have a cast iron, I highly recommend it. First thing I'm going to do is put quarter stick of butter, which is about 2 tablespoons. And we're just going to let that melt. That's going to help cook the steak a little quicker. Alright, butter's all melted. So now I'm going to apply the steak. Make sure it'll keep your hands washed like I do. Alright, so what we're going to be doing is that we're going to have the steak on the skillet and then set a timer for 3 minutes. And then when the 3 minutes goes off, flip the steak, because all we're doing right now is we're searing it. We're going to sear both sides 3 minutes each. Alright, so steak's been seared on both sides for 3 minutes each. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the steak off. And we're going to move it onto here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put it in the oven for about 10 minutes on 350 degrees. And that's going to help cook the inside a bit without having to worry about burning the outside. So we're going to keep this in the oven for about 10 minutes. While we're waiting for that to cook, we are going to move on to the asparagus and the mushrooms, since those don't take too long to cook. And yeah, we should have them done by the time the steak's done in the oven. So mushrooms are pretty simple. So as you see here, we got my skillet again. I just threw in some olive oil and then threw the mushrooms in. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stir it around a bit and throw the cover on so it can saute. If you want to add a little bit extra flavor, then I recommend some minced garlic. Just kind of feel it. Just add some here onto it. I'm going to mix that into it. It's a great way to just get that garlic flavor without having to, go through the process of cutting garlic yourself. So yeah, just give it a few minutes. You'll know when it's ready, when it's all nice and soft and looks all cooked. Alright, our mushrooms are now done, as well as our potatoes. Steak's still cooking in the oven, so now we're going to work on our asparagus. So just take the same pan as before, and this time just throw in the asparagus. Asparagus might take a little bit longer since there's a lot of water inside of it. Once again, I like to add some minced garlic to it to help give it a little extra flavor, that garlic flavor into it. And then I'm going to keep it covered, but then make sure you flip it from side to side so one side doesn't stay all burnt, or it's burnt on one side. Make sure it's well cooked on both sides. Alright, now our asparagus is all finished. And luckily it got done around the same time as my timer went off for the steak, so let's pull the steak out and finish this up. Alright, so I just pulled out the steak. As you can see, it looks all nice and cooked. Still with some pink on the inside. If you want it a little bit more brown on the inside, maybe keep it in for another 3 or 5 minutes. But yeah, this is basically it for the steak, so let's add it onto our plate. Nice steak dinner, and it only took probably 30 minutes to make. Like I said, you can do this with just a pan in the oven, and just some oil and whatnot. If you have horseradish, you can add to your steak if you're into horseradish. Or if you want to add some ketchup to the potatoes, you can. Maybe add a little bit more salt if you don't have enough the flavor you want. But yeah, pretty cut and dry. This is how you make a nice steak dinner for one. May have made a little too much asparagus, but it's kind of hard to proportion stuff. Anyway, until next time, this is Cooking with Tylon.